evening and welcome to The Breakdown, brought to you by the Lincoln Project. I am Tara Setmayer. This is the Rick Wilson. And tonight
Hey, folks.
we are going to talk to you a little bit about Biden's speech. He just wrapped up a few minutes ago, which was refreshing. We're also going to talk a little bit more about a theme we've been hitting this week with voter suppression, particularly in the state of Georgia. These things are happening all over the country, and it's really, really crucial that we continue to pay attention to it. So we have friend of the show, Jim Galloway, on to talk to us about specifically what the hell's going on down there in Georgia. It's pretty remarkable. So stay tuned for him. He'll be on in a little bit. And of course, we want to hear from you. So send us your tweets at hashtag AskTheBreakdown. And we will pull some of your tweets and answer them throughout the show. And if you want to go old school, we do have the voicemail. You can give us a call and leave us a message, and we will play one or two during the show. Rick, a year ago, do you remember where you were today?
Yep.
As do
Los
I. What were you
Angeles
doing a year
Airport,
ago?
trying to get that. I was on my book tour, and everything started to get canceled because COVID was sweeping the country. And in Washington, we had a president who was pretending COVID didn't exist and saying it was going to go away, and there were only 15 cases, and it's just like the flu, and 100 other lies that cost 500,000 lives. It's kind of rhetoric, kind of meter there. I should write something about that.
Yeah.
But a year ago, none of us understood the scope of what the COVID pandemic would entail, not only from the nature of the disease itself, but from the unbelievable malfeasance, incompetence, and just fuckitude of an administration that didn't really care. They really they really didn't care to listen to anyone about it. No expert mattered. The only people that mattered were people like Peter Navarro and Scott Atlas and Donald Trump. And frankly, and I want to make a really important point. This happened a little after this period, but there was one of those consequential meetings in the White House history that happened during the course of COVID. I call it the Jared Vonce meeting. This was where Jared Kushner led a meeting in April where he decided that blue states weren't going to get testing aid because they weren't nice to Donald Trump. And that cost lives, and that cost months of time trying to get prepared for a pandemic that has now cost us 500,000 lives. And so Jared gets an eternal fuck you for, among other things, holding a meeting and deliberately shaping the response to a pandemic along explicitly partisan lines, and not just partisan, but personal lines, so his father-in-law's ego wouldn't be hurt. So, yeah, it has been a hell of a year, Tara. And it has been a year where the things that have happened in this country have shown us the very best of America and the very worst of America. And I will say this tonight, watching Joe Biden's speech, the sheer normalcy of it, the sheer basic sensibility of it, the idea that you didn't have a guy who was up there, raving for attention about how smart he is or how bigly his brain is or anything else, was such a relief. It was such a pleasure not to have the Trump show on our TV tonight. It was just, and look, Biden's message was fundamentally both practical and optimistic. And that's something you never heard from Donald Trump. You heard the impractical and either the fantasy or the pessimistic.
And optimistic? So, that doesn't exist.
Right, I know, right? How's that shit work?
That doesn't exist. And, we're going to show a clip from Biden's speech in a minute because, you bring up the point that a year ago, life literally changed. It was a year ago today when the pandemic was officially declared. And I remember exactly where I was. I was in Cambridge. I was up at Harvard. And the murmurings about what was going on and, the cases increasing, what would happen to campus? Would they go, I think Stanford was the first major university to decide they were going to go all virtual the rest of the semester. And I was in my car driving through Cambridge, about to go get something from the vet for Tiki. And I heard the announcement and I said, oh.
Yep.
And then the NBA suspended the rest of their season. and Trump, what did Trump do? I mean, he was so defiant and obnoxious and unsympathetic. And I just thought to myself, this is serious. This is serious. And I can remember trying to figure out where to buy, alcohol wipes and things like that, because the shelves were starting to clear off. Like, it was like it's one of those things where you will always remember where you were when you heard that a pandemic had been declared. It was pretty remarkable. And then, it was only a few days later that we evacuated the campus at Harvard, and everyone was shell shocked and packed everything up and went back home.
I had been up there to talk to your
uncertainty.
class. I've been up there to talk to your class like 10 days or a week before that.
Yes, you were the last one.
It was it's crazy. So
it's crazy.
Well,
so let's actually we go ahead.
Yeah, let's play the Biden clip. I think it'll set the tone.
Not yet. Not yet.
No,
we have a COVID recap first. Then we'll
I should read the script.
What script?
What script?
Officially declaring a global pandemic, tonight the World Health Organization says it's deeply concerned by the alarming spread of the coronavirus and the levels of inaction to stop it.
We have rung the alarm bell loud and clear.
The headlines only grow more worrisome. The whole world is talking about this outbreak. None of us is unaffected by its impact.
This will put a human face on it, okay? Tom Hanks just tweeted. He and his wife, they got tested. They have coronavirus.
It is 10 times more lethal than the seasonal flu.
Nationwide, the virus has prompted more than 1,500 schools to close.
The move, called mandatory social distancing, would ban gatherings with 250 people or more.
The decisions that we're making today are going to be profoundly disturbing to a lot of the ways we live our lives.
And fans, due to unforeseen circumstances, the game tonight has been postponed.
I am officially declaring a national emergency. Two very big words.
We're hearing from health officials around the country who say they could be facing a shortage not only of supplies, but of manpower in this fight.
The president on March 6th told the people in my district publicly that the tests were ready. There were no tests. Zero.
Lucky or through talent or through luck, call it whatever you want, we will overcome the threat of the virus.
But is the worst yet to come, Dr. Fauci?
Yes, it is. Bottom line, it's going to get worse.
Watching that, the PTSD of the Trump years comes back. Okay, first of all, that horrible orange makeup, which we don't have to see anymore. Thank you, Lord. The national emergency, two very big words. I mean, you just watch a clip of that, and compared to what we saw earlier this evening from Joe Biden, and it's just scary to think how close we came to another 4 years of that fuckery. I mean, we were not that far off from another 4 years of that.
20,000
and imagine
votes.
where we would be. That's right. 20,000 votes could have gone if they had gone in a different direction. That is an NBA basketball game. It's crazy. And of course, Donald Trump could not let it go by without putting out a statement. No, he didn't tweet because he can't. But he freaking puts out a statement today. Well, right. He puts out a statement today that says, I hope that everyone remembers when they're getting the COVID-19, often referred to as the China virus vaccine, that if I wasn't president, you wouldn't be getting that beautiful shot for 5 years at best, and probably wouldn't be getting it at all. I hope everyone remembers. I mean, you feel the temper tantrum, like through the paper, like me all the time, and during Biden's speech tonight, you didn't really hear the word I at all. He talked about we will get through this. We have to do this. That's what a president does. Let's take a listen to a clip from Biden tonight.
Over a year ago, no one could have imagined what we were about to go through. But now, we're coming through it. And it's a shared experience that binds us together as a nation. We are bound together by the loss and the pain of the days that have gone by. We're also bound together by the hope and the possibilities for the days in front of us. My fervent prayer for our country is that after all we've been through, we'll come together as one people, one nation, one America. I believe we can and we will. We're seizing this moment, and history, I believe, will record. We faced and overcame one of the toughest and darkest periods in this nation's history, darkest we've ever known. I promise you, we'll come out stronger with a renewed faith in ourselves, a renewed commitment to one another, to our communities, and to our country. This is the United States of America. And there's nothing, from the bottom of my heart, I believe this, there's nothing we can't do when we do it together. So God bless you all. And please, God, give solace to all those people who lost someone. And may God protect our troops. Thank you for taking the time to listen. I look forward to seeing you.
Presidenting. That's what it looks like right there. To Rick's point earlier, it was so refreshing and reassuring to hear Joe Biden speak to the country sincerely, truthfully. He emphasized the importance of the fact that he would tell you the truth. He said, I promise you, I will tell you the truth. And that was put in that statement on purpose. That was not by accident. Presidential speeches are very carefully written, and every single word is vetted and put in there for a reason. Rick, you know this. You've written speeches before. There was a reason why they put an emphasis on telling the American people the truth and letting people know that it's our responsibility to get through this and that we will get through this together. I mean, Biden made a major announcement saying that ahead of schedule, everyone in the country will be eligible by May 1st for the vaccine. That is a huge piece of hope for people that we're taking another huge step towards some semblance of normalcy. He said that we should be able to have gatherings on July 4th. That's the goal. That it's Independence Day, not only for our country, but from the virus, hopefully, at least somewhat, because we'll have a vaccine. Most people will be vaccinated. It was just, like I said, it's almost like when you're in an abusive relationship and then you finally find the loving partner and you're like, oh, this is what it feels like to be loved. It's like not that dysfunctional shit for the last 4 years. Like, this is what a functional, healthy relationship between a president and his citizens looks like.
Well, Tara, it's so true. And again, you go back to the speech itself was not some historical piece of rhetoric that will live throughout the ages, but it was such a measured, sensible, clearly wrought artifact of presidential leadership at the right moment with the right tone. It wasn't hyperbolic. It wasn't over the top. It still called on Americans to show responsibility and gave them a realistic view. We're not out of the woods yet, but there's light ahead. The dawn is breaking. We will get through this as Americans. And so I really think that this is, it's also bound to make someone like Trump just furious. Because what Republicans spent the last few weeks doing, they tried to overthrow the government. They've had huge hissy fits about Dr. Seuss, which obviously is the biggest issue ever, cancel culture, and a variety of other fantasies that ride their little minds like hobgoblins. And while they were doing that, the Democrats said, well, we better pass some economic relief, and they just did it. And I think they may be learning a lesson. They may be learning a lesson is that the current Republican Party's philosophical predicates are all gone. They are looking to own the libs, get on Fox, have Tucker notice them. See me, senpai. They are begging for attention all the time. And so that is not a governing philosophy. Why, no, I did say Tucker.
It's funny. You should mention Mr. Carlson, because guess what Fox News was doing during Biden's speech tonight? check
Well,
out
let's
these
see.
screenshots.
You have it?
Yes. Biden should be finished. Tucker is on any minute. That is a real chyron. There's more. Biden's speech nearly finished. Tucker will respond. There's another. Tucker responds to Biden in less than 3 minutes. These were the real chyrons up on Fox News while the president of the United States was giving his first major speech to the nation, his first address to the nation from the East Wing of the White House. And that's what they put up. They are so unserious. I mean, the buffoonery is immeasurable over there.
If I wanted the opinion of the heir to the Swanson frozen fish stick fortune from Mr. Tucker McNear Swanson Carlson, it's going to be a short day when I need his opinion.
Yeah.
But this is
We
their
have
thing.
more about Tucker in a minute.
It's purely performative. Yeah. We've got some more
Yes.
dragging of Tucker to do.
Yes, in a minute. But back to the serious adults. All the former living presidents and first ladies cut a vaccine PSA that aired today. I believe that the campaign started today. We're going to show that ad later on in the show. But there was someone that was missing from that PSA. It was the Trumps. No, they were not a part of it. Why? Because they're the worst and uncooperative and dishonest. Let's remember that Donald Trump and his wife, they got vaccinated in secret in January. No, they didn't tell anyone. No, they didn't go out and be responsible and tell the American people and demonstrate to them, particularly his obstinate supporters that were talking about they're not going to get a vaccine and they're anti-vaxxers and all this. He didn't go out there and do the right thing and show the American public that the vaccines were safe and he himself was getting it. You know who did do that? Joe Biden, Jill Biden, Kamala Harris, her husband. As responsible public servants, that's what they did. But Trump, no, he didn't do it. So guess what? He didn't get to be in the PSA, which is for the better anyway, because, who wants to see them anymore? We want them to go away. But we'll show you that later on in the show. The COVID relief bill, as Rick was mentioning, that was signed into law today. The American Rescue Plan Act, signed into law this weekend. As early as this weekend, it's reported that Americans will start to see the $1,400 checks in their bank accounts if they qualify. Could be up to $5,600 if you're a family of 4. I think the income level is $75,000 for adults and $150,000 for couples. Might check my math on that, but it's the thresholds are a little bit different. But if you're eligible, $1,400 per adult and dependent in the house. That is an incredible boost for people. There's a lot of other stuff in this bill too, including money for restaurants, for small businesses and restaurants, because the service industries have been hit really, really hard. And, Republicans, not one Republican voted for this thing in the House. Okay, let's remember that. But they have no problem taking credit for it once it's passed, because this money gets to, their communities will benefit from it. And Senator Wicker of Mississippi, who's one example of this, didn't vote for the bill, but couldn't wait to put out a tweet saying, oh, this is wonderful. $28.6 billion included for targeted relief for restaurants. He didn't vote for it. If it were up to him, that money would never have been there for those restaurants. So we are making him our honorary loathsome hypocrite of the day.
Poor Roger.
He's not the only one. This isn't the first time, by the way. I remember back in 2009 when the stimulus bill was passed. And, as Republicans, we had some issues with the stimulus bill, but whatever. But there were those who were vehemently against it. But once it passed, they couldn't wait to stand there with their stimulus checks that went to whatever organization or factory or whatever business in their community. Like former Congressman Phil Gingrey, he was one of those that did that. And there he is. There's a picture of him. I saw it earlier tonight on CNN, and I was like, I remember when members were doing that. So it's not the first time. Nancy Pelosi said, she was like, it's typical that they're voting no and take the dough. You gotta love the Nancy Pelosi-isms. That's what she said about Republicans. It's funny. Oh my goodness. All right. So Rick, onward to your favorite trust fund kid, Tucker Carlson. He, besides just being an all-around awful person, he went on this ridiculous rant about women in the military and talking about how he was all worked up because the military is making some adjustments in their gear and in their uniforms to accommodate pregnant women, and attacking them, saying that, I don't know, like it's somehow like China is beating us in our military race here because we're feminizing our military and China's not, and somehow it's weakening our military. I can't even begin to tell you how infuriating that is and how insulting that is, especially as a woman. But to all the men, and I mean all the women and men too, but all the women who serve honorably in our armed forces, to listen to a trust fund spoiled brat who's never gotten his hands dirty in his life lecture them about their roles in the military is infuriating. Tell us about the Lincoln Project response.
Well, this afternoon, two of our rapid response editors, Kate Sulkwitz and Jeff Taylor, put together a piece. I'm not sure which of them did it. They're both geniuses. I think Kate was the lead on it. But they put together a little piece comparing and contrasting Tucker, Swanson, McNear, Fishtick, Carlson to women who serve in our military today. Let's go ahead and roll that.
While China's military becomes more masculine as it's assembled the world's largest navy, our military needs to become, as Joe Biden says, more feminine, whatever feminine means anymore.
A little girl who walked by pointed at me and said, "Ooh, Mommy, look, there's a girl one."
Want to be a true intellectual, a man of the future? Become a cuckold. Those are the instructions from CNN.
You've got to put in the work, and you got to put in the time, and it's hard, and there's a lot that you have to learn.
You know the official story about pandas. They're cute but adorably helpless, which is why they're almost extinct. But like a lot of what we hear, that's a lie.
When we go out and talk to the locals, they perceive us sometimes a lot better than they perceive the males. They see the males as more of an aggressive counterpart, whereas when we come out, they're more smiles, and you just see them relax when we're around.
And of course, zombie raccoons are a threat to national security and the well-being of this nation.
When I'm in uniform, I love being feminine too.
Dr. Seuss went from being a beloved childhood author to worse than Hitler in just a matter of days.
Well done, Kate and the team. Those are badass women and should be saluted. Tucker Carlson wouldn't
Absolutely.
last one fucking day in basic training, okay? Not one day. And the audacity of him to diminish the accomplishments of women in the military like that. We're not the only ones that were pissed off by this, okay? There were, high-ranking officials in the military who were very upset about it. The top Pentagon spokesperson, John Kirby, he had something to say about this too. Take a listen. He's an admiral, by the way.
What we absolutely won't do is take personnel advice from a talk show host or the Chinese military. Now, maybe those folks feel like they have something to prove. That's on them. The Secretary certainly shares the revulsion of so many others to what Mr. Carlson said in his opening statement.
Tara, there are two scenarios here. Either Tucker actually believes this, in which case he's just a massive douche. Or the alternative case is that this is more of the performative horseshit that has become a substitute for news and opinion programming on Fox News. I happen to believe that this is the latter. This is trolling, and this is the sort of corrosive bullshit that these people have profited massively off of in the last few years. And it's insulting in every conceivable axis. And the fact that the Joint Chiefs and senior folks at the Pentagon today and people up and down the chain in the military, those people have responded to this with a degree of fuck youism that Tucker should hope that he doesn't have to ever actually go on a military base or travel by military transport somewhere. This guy he has proven, that the steps the military has always made, from integration of African Americans into the force after World War II more thoroughly, to the integration of women into the combat force, to the way that women perform in combat now. You know, we were talking today. I think I was talking to Fred Wellman. It might have been somebody else, but talking about like the best women, some of the best pilots in the Air Force, the Marine Corps, and the Navy are women, because they had to be better.
Right.
They had to be tougher. They had to perform at an even higher standard. There was no bullshitting or slacking off or having fun with it. They went out and did the work. And you know, we've talked to Tammy Duckworth before.
That. Yeah.
Right. Who lost her legs in combat in a helicopter crash. I mean, go fuck yourself, Tucker. Honestly, you're a pathetic little worm, and you're about as masculine as a bowl of tapioca. But you know, the fact of the matter is, the insults to America's combat forces, male and female, have been thoroughly received, and their opinion of you could not be much lower right now.
That's right. And he had the audacity to question Tammy Duckworth's patriotism. You remember that? That wasn't that long ago.
Yep. I do indeed.
Yeah,
I do indeed.
It's unbelievable. The Sergeant Major of the Army, Michael Grinston, he said, to your point, Rick, he said, women lead our most lethal units with character. They will dominate any future battlefield we're called to fight on. Tucker Carlson's words are divisive. They don't reflect our values. We have the most professional, educated, agile, and strongest NCO Corps in the world. We also had a comment from the senior enlisted leader of Space Command. He had something to say about this too. Oh, yes.
Drama TV. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what I call it. I'll apologize up front and tell you that I don't have cable news at home. I don't have it here in the office, and I don't watch a lot of drama TV. I understand some comments were made yesterday, and I watched the clip that Mr. Carlson produced as he referred to pregnant women in the military. I'll remind everyone that his opinion, which he has a right to, is based off of actually 0 days of service in the armed forces.
So take that.
You know, Tara, he clearly has no fucks left to give on Tucker's front. I'm reminded of a quick story that I've read and heard a couple of times, including from somebody who was there at the time. When we first went into Afghanistan in 2003, we were working with one of our allied commanders, a guy named Dostum. Okay, they called him Heavy D. He was an Afghan warlord who was on our side. And one
I know
night,
all about him.
the AC-130 is circling overhead, and it's pounding the shit out of the Taliban. And it's just hammering the shit out of them. And Dostum hears on the radio with the Special Forces and the CIA guys that they're talking to a woman pilot who is directing fire on the Taliban forces. And Dostum gets on the radio to the Taliban and he goes, "You see, the Americans have so much contempt for you. They send women to kill you." And they became terrified that this woman pilot in this AC-130 was going to show up at night and whack the shit out of them. So, you know, this is an insult. This is an insult that Tucker, I'm sure, felt. He had one of his rare and mild erections when he did it. But, you know, other than that, this was a pathetic sort of example of his behavior.
Oh, God, Rick, I don't thank you for that god awful image. I don't ever want to think of ever again. You are not allowed to ever refer to Tucker Carlson and erections ever again in my presence. I am thoroughly skeeved out now. Oh, good grief. We are switching gears. Let's bring in our guest. Oh, good Lord. We are not going to be talking anymore about Tucker Carlson. And
I'm not sure I can follow that.
Oh, my gosh. Jim Galloway, welcome back. You're a friend of the show. You're a longtime journalist down there in Georgia. And you've been covering Georgia politics for 41 years. And as much as we are making fun of Tucker Carlson, this is actually a quite serious issue, what's happening down there in Georgia. And we're happy to help to have you back. So welcome back, Jim.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So we wanted to have you back on the show because this week Georgia passed this voter suppression bill, which is pretty significant considering what's in it. And we wanted to give our audience an opportunity to find out a little bit more about what the hell's going on down there. So explain to us why we should be so concerned about this bill that just passed down there that is a pretty considerable voter suppression bill?
Okay, well, first of all, it's only one of a dozen, and I'm sure it will become more. This was passed out of the state Senate. The most significant element in it was that it would do away with all no excuse absentee balloting, which Republicans put into law in 2005 because they were the ones who were using absentee voting at the time. What is significant is the split that it really that it really revealed within Republican ranks. The Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan, who presides over the state Senate, he refused to preside over that day's session because he didn't want anything to do with it. You had four Republican senators in swing districts, or three in swing districts, and one in a pretty principled stand. Just decided they walked out of the chamber. They would not vote on it. Okay, so what we have now is a back in the, back in the earlier cultural days of the Cultural War, Republicans would be obliged to invite anti-abortion laws, but they would try to control the scope of the abortion laws, and they never could. They always ended up being something just absolutely to what the Supreme Court has ruled. This is another case.
Mm-hmm.
They have Republicans are they are trying to control their Trump base, but they can't control the temperature of the Republican base, and so you've got these very, very hot waffles being passed by the state Senate. You've got some similar bills being generated by the House, and what you have now is, a backroom attempt by Republican legislative leaders to kind of compress these things and maybe kind of put them in a package that won't piss off suburban women who they're going to need to survive in 2022. It's a real dilemma, and they're very cognizant of it.
So let me ask you, and Rick, I know this is something that we at the Lincoln Project will continue to focus on. We have been really adamant about the corporate responsibility and money from these corporations going to politicians who are supporting, who supported the seditionists, at a federal level, that supported people who were willing to vote against the free election and fair election of Joe Biden. And now here in Georgia, there is also scrutiny on some of the major corporations that are headquartered there, like Coca-Cola and Delta, who have funneled money to some of these state senators and state legislators who are pushing these bills. We have a list there of some of those companies and how much money they've been giving to some of these elected officials down there over the last year and a half or so. And that's quite the list. These are companies and corporations that we use their products every day, from Walmart to Walgreens, Pfizer, with the vaccine. Has there been any blowback at all yet? Is there a mounting effort down there in Georgia to hold these corporations accountable? What are you hearing about that?
Well, I'm talking to Democrats who say yes, they're trying to make those backroom calls and try to enlist the corporate Georgia's corporate citizens in this. So far, they're holding fire. The Metro Atlanta Chamber has weighed in and saying to say it's not supportive of anything that restricts voting. But so far we haven't reached the apex of this debate, and I would expect corporate citizens to kind of weigh in when that comes. I think we're in the last maybe 10 to 12 days of the session. which will be which will come to the end, which will happen at the end of March. So we've got some time to play.
Year? Is that for the year or just for this part of it? Because every state's legislature has a different schedule. So
okay,
how does it work?
This actually works into it's a very important question. This ends the legislative session, the lawmaking session. We're going to have, maybe August or September. We'll have a special session for redistricting, and that, of course, that's the other shoe that has to drop this year. So you've got Republicans trying to thread the needle on Donald Trump's electoral demands and meeting them, and then you've got the real numbers game that happens with the reapportionment of congressional districts every political boundary in the state.
That's right, which is a huge political battle. Rick, do you want to explain to people why redistricting this year? Because it's not only Georgia, a lot of states are doing this because it's after the census. That's why the census is so important, because this is when we draw congressional lines. You want to explain why that's important?
Folks, every 10 years, the census comes out and we redistrict every state in the union. That draws the lines for congressional districts. Now, many states have a partisan redistricting system. Georgia is still one of those. This is why winning state legislative seats is so vital. This is why Republicans had a period of time, because, and I kid you not, we had a plan to do this, to start winning seats in state legislatures starting in the mid and late 90s, so that by the time the 2000 census rolled around, we would have advantageous redistricting in key states. Now, what you're going to see with this new census that's coming out, and there was a lot of controversy around it because Trump tried to put his thumb on the scale and tweak it and mess with it. You're going to see states like Georgia draw those congressional lines, and they're going to do everything they can to squeeze Republicans into the most advantageous map and the Democrats in the most disadvantageous map. Some states have adopted nonpartisan redistricting, which varies in effectiveness in terms of how sharp the political impact of it is. But Georgia's definitely going to be a state, especially because of all the massive changes in the Atlanta metro area and throughout the state. Demographically, you're going to see a huge amount of fighting there. Jim, would you say that's correct?
Absolutely. And what's happening is this is something that started in the 60s and is now just really playing out to a final chapter. Is Georgia for decades has been ruled by rural voters, by white rural voters, and the population that section of the state has depopulated. Everything is moving into Metro Atlanta. You have not had on January 6th, we elected the pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church of Atlanta, and we elected John Ossoff, a resident of North Metro Atlanta. That has not happened. That has never happened before in the history of Georgia.
That's right.
Because that's where the population center is. So it's quite a phenomenon. You've got these electoral changes are being driven in the Senate by rural members of the state Senate because they fear that loss of influence, and they're being resisted most prominently by Democrats and by some moderate Republicans in Metro Atlanta because they know what it pretends.
That's right, and to that point about the population shifts and things that are going on there. One of the things in this bill was restricting, all this ballot access and restricting ballot access and the long lines and not being able to, bring people water and food when they're on lines. I mean, when we were down there, the Lincoln Project had boots on the ground in Georgia. Nate Nesbitt, who is one of our great political strategists, he was there on the ground helping out in the Georgia runoff. And we actually we partnered with one of the Migos, one of the rappers down there, to help bring water and assist people that were on these long lines. They're Offset, that's his name. Rick is a lot cooler than I am. That's Cardi B's husband. That I knew. But this is, this kind of stuff, they're trying to make it more difficult for people to vote in 2022. And the Washington Post just did a big story about this, that it's not just Georgia. Like I was saying, this is a national phenomenon with Republicans all over the country doing this. And in the Post, they said that these measures create hurdles for tens of millions of voters, which could amount to, quote, the most sweeping contraction of ballot access in the United States since the end of Reconstruction. Now, you've said it's more comparable to the 1950s. So what do you mean by that?
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Here's first of all, Reconstruction was kind of post-military, and you had all these back in the 1870s, 80s, and 90s. You had all these former Confederate veterans who were engaged in the Ku Klux Klan, and they it was quite violent. You had thousands of African Americans, newly freed slaves, die because they were trying to vote, along with the white people who were trying to help them. But when I was earlier, the parallel that I would say maybe even more close is the 1950s, when the fight over integration was at its peak, when the U.S. Supreme Court issued Brown versus the Board of Education in 1954. What you had then was you had a string. You had pretty much lockstep every Deep South state issue what was called and they use this phrase, mass resistance. Every tool that the state could provide to resist integration was employed. This is when George Wallace was talking about closing down university systems in Alabama. This is when, in 1956, the state of Georgia added that Confederate battle emblem to its state flag. That was a direct act of protest. It didn't come down until Roy Barnes brought it down in 2001. But that was a literal middle finger to the U.S. Supreme Court, and we have. I think that's more of what we have now, because we have because that movement in the 50s it enlisted every state legislature, which is happening right now. The difference here, though, is and Rick, I find this really amazing, is that it's not just southern states. You have Iowa. You have Iowa issuing voter suppression laws against who? I don't know.
Right, because there's not exactly a large African American population in Iowa. So what are they doing?
But they are responding to the Trump call for limiting the number of people who can vote.
Yeah.
There was a really interesting lawsuit filed here in December. This was the Trump lawsuit challenging Georgia's laws. It was signed on to by the Georgia State GOP. All right, and there was a really interesting phrase in there. Okay, and it said basically that citizens had a right to be protected against voter dilution, not voter fraud, voter dilution.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
Interesting.
That's the game here.
I'm very curious. I haven't tracked this down yet. The language in some of these voter suppression bills is very similar state to state. And I'm wondering if it was, ALEC or something similar that handed off these sort of model bills to the states. But the language seems very, very similar in different states.
I wouldn't be surprised if there were a single author to it. It's a little bit too fast moving for ALEC, I think.
True, probably.
I'm not sure that they would be tied to it. I think this is coming from a kind of a GOP network. I think a very, very strict GOP network.
Yeah. But there's clearly somebody crafting these.
Coordination. Yeah, there's coordination, no doubt about it.
Absolutely, there's coordination.
So, Jim, I think we have a voicemail message for you. Let's take a listen.
Oh dear.
We're teeing it up. We have to rewind the tape.
My question is for the Lincoln Project. So since the voting bills for the Georgia Republicans, they're trying to suppress the voters, will there ever be a chance that H.R. 1 passes in the House and the Senate? And if it doesn't pass, will there be avenues to let voters know what the GOP is doing to suppress the votes so they can vote? Thanks for taking my question.
Okay, well, I mean, look, the thing that does make this different from the 1950s is you do have a president who has already identified the problem and spoken up against it, about it. You have the U.S. House who has passed H.R. 1, and we'll see if the Senate version kind of prompts a change in the rules concerning the filibuster. As far as the other impact here is, look, I'm talking to Republicans here who are just desperately afraid that this faction, the Trump faction of the Republican Party in Georgia, is just playing into the hands of Stacey Abrams. I was talking to one who said, you might as well put a statue to her outside the Capitol already, because
right.
Because what you are doing is you are validating everything that her movement has been about, and she is not going to be wanting for money in 2022.
Yes, that's right. I mean, and the Republicans recognize this, which is why Kelly Loeffler, since she's been defeated, they're trying to recreate what Stacey Abrams did in the grassroots organizing, and which was years in the making. Republicans are trying to recreate that there, and Kelly Loeffler is supposed to be the head of this thing. And good luck with that. But there's something else.
It's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to be perceived as a Republican champion of voting if you've been an advocate for dumping 5 million presidential votes out of Georgia into the Chattahoochee River. It doesn't play well.
Right, that's right. And you know what else doesn't play well? When the president of the United States is caught on tape pressuring Georgia officials to try to commit potentially criminal acts his action, pushing them to find the fraud, find the votes. It was reported recently, even though it's old news, we know about the tape with Raffensperger. But we now know that President Trump at the time, called the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, the head of the Bureau of Investigation was Ms. Watson.
No. She was a chief investigator for Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger's office, working with the GBI. And,
got it.
And Trump got her on the phone, and look, she was very polite. She said, "We're doing our job." And the two interesting things out of that were Trump saying, "If you find the right answer, you'll be highly praised."
Yeah,
and also,
highly praised.
He also emphasized the need to have something concrete done before January 6th. For some reason, we don't know why, do we?
January 6th. I wonder why. For those who are unfamiliar with some of that audio, we have it for you. Take a listen.
I just wanted to thank you for everything. You told me you've been great. And, look, this country is counting on it because it's very interesting. So I won Florida in a record number, Ohio in a record, Texas in a record, Alabama by 40 points. And I won everything but Georgia. And I won Georgia. I know that by a lot. And the people know it. And, something happened there. I mean, something bad happened. And I hope you're doing that job, because if you, I hope you're going back 2 years as opposed to just checking, one against the other, because that would just be sort of a signature check that didn't mean anything. But if you go back 2 years, and if you can get to Fulton, you're going to find things that are going to be unbelievable. The dishonesty that we've heard from them.
Right.
Just good sources, really good sources. But Fulton is the mother lode, as the expression goes, Fulton County.
I I do appreciate you calling. I know that you're a very, very busy, very important man, and I'm very honored that you called. And you know, and quite
important what you're doing.
Quite frankly, I'm shocked, and that you would take time to do that. But I am very appreciative.
Now, Mark asked me to do it. He thinks you're great, and you know, it's just you have the most important job in the country right now, because if we win Georgia, first of all, if we win, you're going to have 2 wins. They're not going to win right now. You know, they're down because the people of Georgia are so angry at what happened to me. They know I won. When the right answer comes out, you'll be praised. I mean, I don't know why. You know, they made it so hard. They will be praised. People will say, "Great," because that's what it's about. That ability to check and to make it right, because everyone knows it's wrong.
It's so insidious.
I will have to say, just from a local perspective, we knew the call happened. I'm just amazed that the video was contained for almost 4 months.
Well, I guess they wanted to make sure that he wasn't getting re-inaugurated on March 4th. They just wanted to be sure.
Right. Yeah, this was. I mean, you know, this is. But I will more seriously. What it does is, to me, I mean, you've got Fani Willis. She's the Fulton County DA. By the way, Fulton County, which Trump referenced, it is a huge cache of African American votes. So we have to point to that. But Fani Willis is the DA there now, and this second tape really points. It creates a pattern, if you will, when combined with the January 3rd recording, a call that Trump made to Raffensperger himself. It's the language is quite similar, and so are the aims.
Yeah, it's just really extraordinary. The level of blatantly criminal activity that this president has engaged in on more than one occasion on all kinds of things, and yet manages to get away with it. It's just remarkable and incredibly frustrating. Jim Galloway, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you. And
thank you, Jim. As always, always great to hear from you.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed.
We'll be talking next time. We'll talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene and what an asinine piece of work she is. But we're not going to give her any airtime tonight because we're over her for now. Thank you, Jim.
Okay. All right. We'll see you. You take care.
Thanks, Jim. Have a great night.
Oh my goodness! I was like, I'm not talking about her. I'm not talking about any of those QAnon people tonight. We're feeling good right now. We've got Joe Biden and the COVID bill and vaccines, and screwed Marjorie Taylor Greene and the QAnon crazies. Rick, I know you have to go, so I will say good night to you.
I have a hard out at 10 tonight.
Yes,
Thank you.
I will continue on with the final parts of the show.
Thank you very much. I will talk to you tomorrow, of course, and I will see you Tuesday. Thanks, guys.
Indeed. And we say goodnight to the Rick Wilson. So before we go end the show tonight, I promised you that I would play the PSA vaccine video. That's our call to action, because this week it's been all about the vaccines. I've been blessed enough to get my first shot. So did my mom. My husband's already vaccinated. So we are fortunate, and millions more people will be able to do the same by May 1st. At least it'll be available. So let's hear it better, not just from me, but from presidents. Let's take a look.
Right now, the COVID-19 vaccines are available to millions of Americans, and soon they will be available to everyone.
This vaccine means hope. It will protect you and those you love from this dangerous and deadly disease.
I want to go back to work, and I want to be able to move around.
To visit with Michelle's mom, to hug her and see her on her birthday.
You know what I'm really looking forward to is going to opening day in Texas Ranger Stadium with a full stadium.
We've lost enough people, and we've suffered enough damage.
In order to get rid of this pandemic, it's important for our fellow citizens to get vaccinated.
I'm getting vaccinated because we want this pandemic to end as soon as possible.
So we urge you to get vaccinated when it's available to you.
So roll up your sleeve and do your part.
This is our shot. Now it's up to you.
God bless them. That's really great to see that bipartisan support to tell Americans, we're all in this together and get your vaccine. We encourage everyone to be patient. Your turn will come, and we'll be that much closer to normalcy soon enough. That's what I call presidenting. So before we go tonight, I just wanted to remind everyone to check out our new Lincoln Project podcast, the Lincoln Project 2.0. We have our latest, I think Fred Wellman is on this episode. Everyone was really excited. We got great feedback about our new executive director, Fred Wellman. He was on the show with us on Tuesday. So check him out on the latest edition of the podcast. And as always, we'll see you next week on Tuesday, same time, same channel, and follow us at LPTV. Check out the podcast and have a great weekend. Wear your mask.
I see that visceral rage in my fellow veterans that I haven't seen in ages. There's this true outrage at the idea that our nation that we fought so hard to defend, that we went overseas and wore a flag proudly on our shoulders as a beacon of hope, has devolved to a point where violence is now a part of the political spectrum.
The party of President Trump.
Well, Donald J. Trump ain't going anywhere.
They kept saying, he's going to start a brand new party. We have the Republican Party. It's going to unite and be stronger than ever before.
President Trump has sent a cease and desist order to the RNC, the NRCC, and the NRSC.
This is what he wrote tonight. Send your donation to Save America PAC at DonaldJTrump.com.
Do you miss me yet? Do you miss me?
Hey guys, hope you're doing well. Just watching my algorithms get crushed. I guess I did something to piss off the Instagram gods, so hopefully you're seeing this stuff anyway. We'll do what we can. Talk to you soon.